So what I'm gonna do right now is, um, Maya is a very powerful tool, but it's a little bit complicated in terms of getting to stuff and doing things in it. As soon as you learn it a little bit, it will get much faster to work with. I'm gonna recap one more time how to access different things in Maya and give you guys a few tips and hints of how to make it a bit easier for you to use the program. And then we'll show you some mesh tweaking techniques. Okay, this is a bigger screen. I'm just gonna use that. Okay, first of all, we are talking about we keep talking about these hotkeys. So because there are so many menus in Maya, it's always helpful to learn the hotkeys that you will use more than the others. And then you can keep using them instead of going through the menus and pick the things. So maybe there are 10 or 20 things that you will keep using and you will learn those hotkeys. And they will include, let me just, thanks for leaving me 3 of these. I'm going to delete 2 if you don't mind.
I do.
And I'm going to draw just a box. I'm going to draw just a box. So that we have something to start talking about. And then here, with pressing space, you can go into one view, holding Alt and your mouse, you can orbit around. I'm gonna select this guy up here that shows me the edges, so that makes it a bit more clear for me what I'm dealing with. So I always keep that turned on. So we'll talk about Q, W, E, and R that are the select, move, rotate, and scale tools. It's basically because you use them a lot, they have selected the top four keys on your keyboard to just assign them to. So Q, W, E, and R are the select, move, scale, and rotate. Then we talk about the numbers that are softening your geometry. Like 1 is the normal situation. When you have your object selected, 2 will soften that and also show you the actual geometry, that is the box around it. And 3 will just show you the softened object or the softened version. And then 4, 5 are the other display modes like wireframe or shaded and that kind of thing. So it's good to be, when you have your object selected, be in the mode 1 where you see the actual geometry. But also sometimes when you want to see what is in a smooth result of the thing, we're going to see it today, that it's good to have your number 2 or 3 mode on to kind of test it in a softer version. But the actual geometry you're dealing with is the number 1. The number 2 and 3 is more of a display mode. So what Alex was showing you guys for smoothing the geometry is actually applying a smooth function on your geometry. 2 and 3 are only display. The other thing that may be useful for you is A and F. So if you do A, is kind of zoom extent. It's going to show you everything on your screen. So if you import something and it's lost, you don't know how to find it, you can press A and it will do a zoom extent. That's fine to have some background music. And then when you have something selected, you can press F, and then that will do a zoom on that particular object. So again, I recommend just browsing the hotkeys and find them. You can find them through help here. You can also Google them and find probably, I'm pretty sure there's out there a list of good hotkeys you need to learn on Maya or something like that. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that there are, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there are so many ways of accessing stuff in Maya. Like Alex was showing you guys, when you hold right click, it will give you the selection option. So that's one way of doing it. And Shay was showing you a different way of doing it up there when you click on this thing. So same way you can select object mode, edges, faces, and all that kind of thing over here. You can do that with right click and hold on your window and go if you want to selecting edges or select your object, a face, vertex, or whatever. So for now, I'm just gonna select an edge to show you guys what that means. I know it's exactly what Shay showed you last time, but that's kind of the idea. So right click is one way, holding space is another way. They call it the hot box. You can access all the menus that are up here in Maya with just holding your space and then going through these menus and selecting whatever you want. So that's another way. It is one of the most confusing ways of accessing things, but a lot of people love it. So yeah, that's there for you to use. Another thing is when you are selecting a function to use, you will see a box next to it. When you select that box, it will actually open a window for you that has properties of that function or that modifier that you're applying. And then before just randomly selecting the thing and trying to see how it works, you can decide on the numbers of the thing you want to create. For example, if you want to make a box that is right here under create polygon primitives, and then we have a cube. We will click on this square over there. It will open up that, and then we can say we want a 5 by 5 by 25, and then as soon as I click, it will give me the box with the same with the dimensions I've defined for it. Another thing that is also interesting, so when you have a mode selected, whether it's object or face or anything, why is it moving? I'll be in face, and then you have something else selected as well. I'll press F to do a zoom on my object, and then you hold Shift and right click like Alex was showing. It will show you a menu that allows you to edit that specific item that you have selected. So a lot of times when you don't know what you can do with the thing in your hand, it's very good to just hold Shift and right click, and then you'll figure it out. I hope it was an option in life, but it's not, unfortunately. Okay, so that's that. And then, yeah, so I talked about the squares. That's the other thing that is different. I know you guys have started using Maya last semester, and you guys know Rhino a little bit too. So something that is different between a lot of programs, including Rhino, with softwares like Maya and Max, is that when you undo, it will include your selections as well. So if I select this and then I go forward and select that and then select this, these are all actions that I've made that are undoable. So if I undo, it will undo my selection, as you can see. So that is a very good tool because a lot of times you try so hard to select specific faces and suddenly it's disappearing, or you select something mistakenly and you want to go back so you can undo. But also at the same time, it will increase the number of undos that the actions that you're doing. So if you have 50 undos, a lot of them are selections, so that might be a bit tricky. So you want to make sure, as Shay was showing you guys last time, you want to make sure you have enough number of undos that you can go back as long as you need to. I know Branko has talked to you guys about the differences between NURBS and meshes, but it's also good to know that programs are known for being good in one or the other. Maya is very good in mesh. It's also good in NURBS, but not as good as Rhino. Rhino is very good in NURBS, but not as good as Maya and meshes. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, meshes in Maya, NURBS in Rhino. However you create the sentence is fine. Talking about the meshes, you have, okay, again, up here you have different options. We're going to talk about animations and dynamics in the next tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to focus on getting comfortable with Maya and editing your mesh and just having some fun. So we're going to focus only on modeling for now. And under modeling, up here you can see you got a mesh menu, you got an edit mesh, you got a mesh tool. And on each of them, you have the option to, when you have your drop-down menu, let's say you're going to do a lot of work here in mesh, and then you want to have this window open for you. So you'll just click up here. This will be a window that you have access to all the time. So instead of always going back to that menu, you can have this menu. If you have a second screen or somewhere on the side, you can just leave it there. It's easier to access stuff through there. Another thing that is useful to know is, for example, you have heard about an action or function from us. You don't know where to find it or you forgot. You can always go to help. There's a find menu, and you can type in what you wanted to do. Like right now, we're talking about mesh cleanup. So I'll just type in cleanup. and there are no matches for this. There's a mesh and cleanup. It showed me under modeling, there's a mesh menu and there's a cleanup menu. So if you are in modeling, you can go up there in the mesh and then under this, which is already open in here, but to be less confusing, I'll just open from there. So mesh, there should be a cleanup option. I will go look for it, and there it goes. So if you select this and then you have your mesh selected, you should be able to clean that up. I'll give that a try and see if that works. That's that. Okay, the other thing is that you will be dealing with a lot of different objects in your environment. So you will have a lot of, you will have your matrix, you will also have a lot of different variations of things that you have already created in your environment. You want to hide them and isolate them and that kind of stuff. Do you guys know where to find them? If you wanted to give it a try and just guess, where do you think you can find hide and show and isolate and that kind of functions? Right, it's on their display. So if you have something selected, you can go up there on the display, and then it will give you the options to hide your selection. And sometimes they have different options like hide the things that are not selected, or show the last hidden object, or show all, or show selection. So take a look at the display menu. There are some good tools that you want to use. The other thing that is important is that the nature of Maya is very parametric, meaning that in Rhino, if you were dealing with a form, a geometry, you were manipulating and changing it, at any given moment, what you were seeing was what you had. But in Maya, when whatever you apply on an object is saved somewhere as a step you have taken through the process. So you can always go back and edit those. When I show you some mesh editing tools, I will show some examples of this, but always know the history of the things you're doing in an object is there. And then you have the option to delete them, because sometimes being too parametrics may cause you some problems and stop you from, first of all, would make the file very heavy and using it kind of difficult. And at the same time, it may give you some problems because you'll see that maybe you want to move your object. There is a, for example, bend tool on it too. If you don't move the bend with the object will be deformed. So I'll show you what that means, but always know it's a parametric tool. You can always go back and change stuff. Don't rely on it too much, but the history of what you have done is there always. If you wanted to delete that, it is under Edit, Delete by Type, and History. If you go there, you can delete all the history to one object. When your object is selected, you will go under Edit, Delete by Type, and Delete History. And then the other thing is that you see a lot of windows popping up and other things in Maya that are actually very, very helpful. At some point, it may be a bit frustrating to have all these pop-ups, but it's very helpful. And one way to bring those up is to double-click on the tool that you are using. So when you double-click, it will give you the tool setting window, and through there you can, again, edit the things or properties of the tool you're using. Okay, Alex talked about the soft selection. Do you guys remember what the shortcut or hotkey was for soft selection? B. Okay, there is another use for the B, and it was always confusing for me. And recently I figured out it stands for brush as well. So whenever you're dealing with something and you want to change the dimension of that, holding B is another use. Is not the soft selection. It's going to be the size of the brush you're dealing with. So I'm going to just show it again, but it's so important. I'm sure at some point you forget and it's going to give you a hard time. So soft selection is on holding not space, the B, and dragging on the sides. With left click down, you can change the brush size of your tool. It is useful for selecting, it's useful for sculpting tools, anything that is a brush-based tool. It's good to define your brush size. At the same time, you have a brush size and a brush strength is defined for any tool that you're using. So if you go under your window up here, there is setting preferences, and there is your Not there. Anyways, I'm not seeing it right now, but I know there's a different way of accessing it. So let's say you have these sculpting tools. If you double click and get your tool setting up, you have your brush size for sure. That's what I showed, and there's a brush strength too. When I'm gonna show you guys what the sculpting tools are, that will become important too. And then that. Okay. Just a few more things, and then we can go to edit some meshes. Any questions so far? No. Okay. So there are just some general things good to know. I'll show the applications as well. But for now, probably the last thing is, do you guys know about the faces having an inside side and an outside side, and they're different? One may be black and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's event because this project is meant to be fabricated at some point. It is kind of important to make sure your mesh is clean. If you are seeing some of the inside faces on the outside, it means that if you are creating a cut sheet for a folding object, instead of folding your outside, you will fold your inside. So it will give you some problems. The way to know how it works is that the inside faces are usually black in Maya. So if you saw a black face, it's either an inside face or two faces very closely overlapping. And that's an alarming sign because you need to fix that to have a clean mesh. What is a clean mesh? Whenever you have a form like this, I'll go to my object mode, I'll just shift right click, I'll say subdivide, I'll do some more subdivisions, and you can see this is an example of a clean mesh. It is defined when you're having where are these points and edges are meeting each other is clean. But an example like that was produced by a machine may in a lot of different situations not be a very clean mesh. As you can see over here, you see a lot of weird stuff happening, and that shows why it's not a clean mesh. The good thing is that Recap is doing a very good job in the latest version, and it's a lot cleaner than the previous ones. So I was impressed by the improvements they have made to the software. But still, just make sure you're dealing with a clean mesh. Okay, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If not, we can move on to some mesh editing tools. Okay, great. I've got this that Alex left for me. I have my object selected. I'll just press F to zoom around it, holding Alt down and left click. I can orbit around. The first thing I want to talk about is the sculpting tools. So Alex showed you how to reduce the number of meshes or the number of polys that your mesh object has. So I'm just going to show that one more time and get, so shift right click, there should be a reduce down here, and then the number you're giving the reduce, the percentage is the percentage you're reducing your mesh width. So if you want to keep 25% of the object up there, you have to reduce it by 75. So this is not the result, this is actually the function you're applying. So 75% reduction is happening through there. That's that. And then there's also another way of changing numbers in Maya. So when you have something selected, I'll go back to my box because that's always a good example. So let's say I've got a box here. I want to change its dimensions or change even its location. I will click on this whatever you call it, the name of the parameter, and then on the screen or on the window, I would hold my scroll and drag to the sides. You can see the number is going up and down. So sometimes you don't want to put in a number, just want to see if it's a bit more or less, how it's going to affect my thing. That's how to do it. Okay, so back to our object. So sculpting tool is accessible through this menu. So when you're under modeling, down here you got sculpting, and it will give you a few different objects. Have you guys worked in Modbox or anything similar to that? There's a program by Autodesk that is pretty powerful and it's for animators and character designers, basically. They do a lot of interesting texture work, and it's like actual sculpting stuff. So it's a mod box. You go play with your mesh and get interesting stuff out of it. And because that was a very successful experience, they decided to put those tools in any other programs they have. So 3D Max has it now, Maya has it now, so there are sculpting tools you can use. Just before that, this is going back to the history idea. So this is the object selected under the channel box. You can see down here under the inputs, there has been a poly reduce function on it by 75%. I don't want it to be that low. Maybe I'll just reduce it to 25. Now you can see my history has changed my model. Sculpting tools, the first one is Sculpt. There are a few ones. I'm not going to show you guys what each of them do. Yes?
Sorry, this optimization tool, when you make a modification like that, does it retain the order of the operations for that?
Okay. Yeah. And it may be messy because sometimes you add something and then use something over it and then use something else over that. And then if you go 3 steps back and change it, it will go crazy. Okay, back to sculpting tools. There are sculpting, which will just add volume to your geometry. There is smoothness that will smooth it, and some more stuff. I'll let you guys have some fun with it. It's a very cool tool to use, but I'm just going to show you how it's being used. So first one, that is sculpting. I'm here. I don't see my brush size. That's probably because it's too big. I'm going to hold B and left click and go sideways to make it smaller. And you can see sides of the brush size is still very big. It's coming. It's coming. All right, there we go. Now we can see the brush. With that, I can go in and edit my geometry. You can see it's kind of going crazy. That's because the strength is too high. I will undo just to make it a bit faster. It's not necessarily Control Z to undo. You can also just do Z and undo. So double clicking on this sculpting tool, it will give you the size of the brush and also the strength. So if I reduce the strength to say 2, then go back, now it's making more sense. I'll go around my object like there. Let's say I want to add something up here like that. And now it's done through this easily. So other tools similar to that, smooth. Again, if you want to smooth something, is that. So the way to know what each of them do is whenever any tool in Maya, you're just hovering around, down there here, I wish I had 2 mouse cursors, but I don't. Down here, it will show what it's doing or what action is required from you. So let's say I'm standing up there. It says Smooth Tool. If I go on the next one, it says Relax Tool. It also shows up on top there, but sometimes in some tools it doesn't. So anytime you didn't know what you're supposed to do, you can look down there and see what information is shown. So anyways, that's sculpting tool. Probably a lot of fun you're going to have with that. Any questions so far? No? Okay, that's a good sign. I guess, maybe. Okay, next thing is the deform. I want to show how you can deform a mesh. And it's up here under deform menu. I would recommend you guys go, and after this tutorial, just go under this mesh, edit mesh, and mesh tool, and have fun with the different tools that it's giving you and see what each of them do. For this class, we have selected the specific tools that are useful for this project and gives you more opportunities for manipulating your geometry quicker. But there are a lot of different options that you may be interested in, and that may be your own thing that you'll find. So I really recommend going through all these menus, and actually all the menus that it has, and see what they do. But anyways, under Deform, there's a very cool tool called Lattice. Lattice just basically draws a cage around the whole geometry, and then instead of dealing with each parameter and that geometry, including the faces and vertices, you have a cleaner box around it that you can move stuff in that, and they will be applied on your complicated geometry. So similar to any other objects, I can select my lattice. You can see up here FFD1 lattice. That's the name of the lattice. FFD is the function it's doing. It has subdivisions, so I can change the subdivisions. let's say I want maybe 5 over here and 3 over there and 2, and yeah, 2 there is good. And then holding right click, I want to pick my lattice points, so I'll pick that. And then I'm going to select this guy and move it, or maybe those, and move them up, for example. You can see my object is changing. And then I can go back and select a few more things. Maybe I'll select those and move them in. And also that, and move those in as well. Maybe I'll do a bit of rotation. And then I'll do a more dramatic move here at the end, like that. The only part that may get a bit tricky in this is that selecting the points may not always be very easy, so don't do too many subdivisions on your lattice. Just keep it big enough that you can do the thing you want, but don't do too many stuff on it. But the best part about that I like very much, and I was talking about the history and how that works, is that if you have your lattice object selected and you move it around, it moves with the model. But if you have your model selected, it comes out of the lattice frame, meaning that your lattice is known as a parametric function that is being applied on your model on each moment. So if you are moving around like that, whatever changes you have done to the cage will be assigned to that particular moment. So next time when we talk about animations, I'm going to show you how you can animate this process. So for example, if you do a lattice, you will have the chance to animate your object through that lattice cage and then take 10 frames out of that. And you can process each of them and see how any of those forms would be useful for you. Other functions would do the same thing similarly. And then if you are fine with the lattice you have created and you want to just keep this here, you would go under Edit, delete by type, delete history, and now there's no history on it. You can't edit your lattice anymore, but your object is fixed. Now the history is fixed on that object. Questions? Yes?
Sorry, when you were manipulating it with the lattice box,
right.
Is there a way to change the strength? So when you're moving it, you don't have to move it?
I don't think so. Yeah.
What's the point of moving it out of the lattice so that when you manipulate?
So let's say, I don't know, let's say you're testing a certain form on your lattice and you want to put your object through it, like a machinery that presses stuff. You want to test that and see if I do that on different parts of my object, how that would change the result. And you can then push it through and actually see that. It's very helpful in enough animation tools, but as well for us who are doing massing in this program, it's very useful too. Yeah. Okay, great. So lattice is also another fun tool. And then after that, I'm going to show you guys some other deforming tools. But before going to more deformation, I want to show you an example of, okay, if I have my object selected, right click, I want to pick my faces. I want to show you after this how to find different stuff. So let's say I've got a face and I don't have my soft selection on. I want to see what I can do with this face. I would hold shift and right click. It is giving me all these different options. Some of the names you already heard, some of them you'll try out and see. So you have the bevel face, you have the multi-cut tool, you have a lot of different tools that you can use here, including an extrude face. So extrude may be also a useful tool for you. And the thickness, again, you can edit through here. You can extrude pieces out. And if you have your number 3 on, you can see how that would affect your geometry. You may select more faces and extrude that and get different results. So editing faces and vertices are also another way of manipulating your mesh. So again, right click, selecting faces, selecting vertices, selecting edges. It will give you different options, shift right click for changing those or editing them, and then through there you can again have some fun. One of them that Alex showed you and was one of the most useful ones, a lot of times you will see that you have a piece of geometry that you don't have the right vertices or the right face to move. So in order to create those subdivisions, you can subdivide your whole geometry, but you could also manually select the thing you want to do through the multi-cut tool that Alex was showing. The other thing I want to say is that if you hold Control, it will do a whole cut around the whole thing you have selected. So by holding Control, it will do that, and by holding Shift, it will spin or snap. Sorry, it will snap to the center point of the things you have selected, and then you can draw those lines based on that. That's another thing. And then after this, we'll do some more deforms. More questions? No? Okay. Next thing I want to show you is, let me go back to my object mode and select it and just move it somewhere friendlier. Okay, with this selected, I'll go under deform. Some of these functions are for two or multiple objects to be applied. Some of them are for single objects. I'm going to show you that. So a non-linear deform, I'm just going to click on this menu and have that by my side. And then it has some different tools you can use. So you guys know from their names what a blend, what a bend, a flare, or sign means. But let's give it a try. So if I want to do a blend on this object, I have it selected. I'll just click on the blend. I can click there and actually give it properties. But I just want to have some fun. So I'll just click on blend and see what it does for me. It's not doing much for now, but if I access it through here, so my object selected under the channel box, I found my blend, and then I click on curvature. Now I try to bend. So you see what it does. And as you're seeing the object bending, you can see there is a pink or a purple line on the screen that is actually defining my bend function. And that's actually the main part I'm interested in. So if you have a bend that is working on your object, so kind of similar to what I showed on Lattice, instead of the object, you can select the tool and move that around. And that would be applied to your object differently. So based on where this is, or how you rotate it around, or where you place it, it will give you different results. Yes?
Sorry, where did you get the menu there?
All right. Under Deform, Nonlinear, and I just clicked up here to have the menu by my side. You guys are good? Okay. So similar to Blend, I'm just going to delete that so that it's not too confusing. But similar to Blend, you have the Flare tool that will, again, give you different options to work with. It's gonna change your geometry. Spend some time with these and see what they do, and manipulate your object through those. And then also, I really like what it does by just moving around. So personal preference. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. Another thing that is, so yeah, just go through all of them and see what they do. There's a twist, there's a squash. I'm just going to show you guys what the squash do, the factor. So it will stretch with some twists on top of that. You can see how I will twist my object, and then I can select these and rotate them. It's very funny because the tool is rotating your object, and then you have the power to rotate the tool. So it's a good feeling. And then the sine is like a sine graph. It just will be applied on your geometry. So sine under here, amplitude, you can see like a sine graph. It will just be applied there. You probably don't want to go that crazy with your form, but crazy enough that you are happy and you're having fun, and it's a good result, not just using the tool. So that's also very important. There are so many tools. Don't overkill with using a lot of different ones. Learn them all, have fun, explore, but at the end be selective about what exactly you want to get and how you're exploring this to get there. Not just applying 20 different tools and assume that's the best job you could do. It may be, but not necessarily. Okay. Okay, almost there. Just a few more things. So I showed you to do the deformations here. Not the deformations, but a lot of different things that you do is applicable to only a portion of the model. So let's say you're smoothing or subdividing a form. I'm gonna create my little box here again to show you what I mean. So here my box has okay, here's my box. I'll just select it, shift right click. I want to do some subdivision, not that. I want to do, can't find that, it's probably under faces. I'll select all the faces, shift right click, and I will subdivide. Where is it? Triangulate, maybe that's what it is. So I'll triangulate, it will do some cuts for me. And then it doesn't need to be the whole geometry. It could be a portion of it only. So I could have the whole thing selected, shift, right click, and would this smooth the same place? Yeah, smooth the faces and get this. And then you will say how many times you want this smooth function to happen. And be careful with scrolling that through because it's a very heavy process. It may kill your Maya. But you don't have to put it on the whole thing. You may want to just select a portion and say smooth faces, and it's just going to be applied on that portion of the geometry. As they go around, you see a portion of it is softened, not the whole thing. So that's also another interesting tool or trick that you can use. While I was selecting the faces, I just thought of a different thing. So tools that you're using, try to double click, go through the properties and see if there's anything useful for you to change or be aware of. So for example, in the select tool, I'll just double click here to see what is there. There is a thing called camera-based selection. Do you guys know what that is? Can you guys guess what that means? Just any guess.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, exactly. So camera-based selection. So you can only select the things you see in your camera. So a lot of times you have a complicated form and it's giving you a hard time because as soon as you select something, it will select anything in that depth. And then you will have too many faces selected. So if you have that on, when you select, you will only select the things that was visible through your camera view. So you see the back sides are not selected. The other thing that is good to know is under soft selection, whether it's on or off, you can change the fall off radius and you can change the fall off curvature. And it shows, so it's like the blending mode. So if you have a pixel or a vertex selected, it will fade out with a certain graph and you can manipulate that. You can go fade out faster or slower, and it can fade out be weaker and then get stronger at some point. So you can play with this a little bit. It may even be your tool for mesh editing. So if you do some weird stuff with your geometry there, and you select something with a brush small enough that you can see. So the yellow is stronger and the red is less strong. So if I select this and if I move, just push this out, you can see the effect it is creating for me. So that's a result of that graph of it changing. So back to my select tool, soft selection also has that option for you. Yeah, that's the symmetry thing. Where's that? Okay, another interesting thing in the soft selection is that this fall off mode, whether it's on volume or surface. So if it's on volume, it doesn't matter how your surfaces are formed. As soon as you select a pixel or a vertex over here, in the volume, it will search for more pixels to pick. So let's say you have two faces very close by. Let's say you have a shell condition that actually I can just go and create right now. And that would be a good example. So faces, not camera based, select the whole thing, shift, right click, extrude, some amount. Now I've got a shell that I can't really see, but if I delete a few faces, you can see that I've got a shell condition going on here. So if I, let me just delete a few more. Okay, so if I go to vertices and it's on soft selection is on, it's on volume, as soon as I select this, it will select whatever is behind it because it's very close to it. But if I changed it to surface, then it's following the surface and it will go as far as it can to get to the other point. So it is now based on the surface. So meaning that if I move this out, that other surface is not really moving because I have a weird fall off selected here. It's doing that jagged form over there. Okay, questions? I know it's a lot, and that's why we're recording this. So you will go back and listen to these and just remember the tools. It's more a browsing exercise to just show you guys what's out there and how to access things. I think that was it. Yes.